Hi, I'm Mike McLean. Welcome to the Short Circuit podcast brought to you by Swift Aircraft. In this series, we'll be chatting with a variety of people from all walks of life, but who all have one thing in common: aviation. We'll discuss how and why they got into aviation, what or who inspired them, and what they would say to encourage young people to get involved. Flight fascinates many of us, and our guests will explain why they are compelled to look to the sky. Today's chat is with Dave Edwards. Dave is the current Chief Exec of the Royal Aeronautical Society, the world's oldest such institution. In this conversation we talk about how aviation got under his skin and how his career developed, starting from a farm in mid-Wales and has ended up just a few hundred metres from Buckingham Palace. But it's not all about just the man. We discuss how the Society looks to develop outreach work with young people, as well as all the other activities that it gets involved with. So, let's have a listen to the chat. Good morning, Dave Edwards, and thank you for joining me here on the Short Circuit podcast. And we're going to start off traditionally with question one, and that is, who are you and what is your current role in aviation?
Good morning, Mike. So Dave Edwards, I'm the Chief Executive of the Royal Aeronautical Society, where we are a 150-year-old organisation based in the centre of London, but operating all around the world, and we provide so many different things to so many different people. So a lot of people know us for our conferences and our lectures. A lot of people know us for our branch activities all around the world, from all the way on the west coast in Seattle, all the way down into New Zealand, on the other side of the world. And that's an environment of learning and an environment of fellowship where we bring people together. So that's my, and also, outreach. So going into schools, we do EPA apprenticeship assessment. We do accreditation of degrees. We obviously do a lot of influence with government. So I spend quite a lot of my time in Whitehall, but also across the pond with ICAO, where we're one of the official observers there. So it's a full-on job. I spend quite a lot of time on the road. And quite a lot of evenings, out meeting people and talking about the world of aerospace, aviation, and space.
Wow, okay. I didn't realise we had influence across the pond, so that's new to me. More about yourself, the man. What incident got you involved in aviation or aircraft? What inspired you as a youngster, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's a few people who've heard this story, so I'm happy to share it again, because hopefully it does sort of prove the inspirational moments from aviation and how important they are as you get a little bit later in your career to do the same, pay it back a little bit. So when I was, I've always looked up into the skies. So like all of us, whenever something flies over from my office in central London these days, obviously right next to Buckingham Palace, I have to admit, every time the king takes off in the helicopter, you've lost me. I'm looking out the window at the helicopter. So, just to set the scene on the love of aviation. When I was 14, so I'd been in the Air Cadets, the RAF cadet organisation as a kid. At 14, my parents came back from a shopping trip with one of those little cards that you have in the supermarkets of people looking for things, if they're still a thing. I'm not sure if they were. And it was somebody looking for some help on weekends at the little airfield close to where I grew up in mid-Wales, which was at the time it was a brand new airport. So it's called Welshpool Airport. At the time, it was a farmer's field, and it was just being turned into a regional business airport. So at 14, I went along, got the job, and what happened was, if I'd have met the farmer who was recruiting for that job during the week, I would have gone into farming. Most of my friends back home were still in farming. I met him on the weekends when he was doing his hobby, which was playing with planes. Mm-hmm. And that was it. It was just that moment. So for basically the rest of my school career, which probably slightly impacted on my school career, I spent all of my time at the airfield. I got my private pilot's license when I was 17, and I worked for it. So there was no support from the family, or no financial support from the family. They ran me to the airport every day. I was fire trained. I was doing air traffic control. I was cooking bacon butties in the cafe, refueling aircraft, washing them. So once as people listening to this will know, once it's in your blood, there's no escape from this sector. It was that, I had a great geography teacher as well who used to stop to look out of the window at all the RAF training that was going on over mid Wales. It's a low flying area there, so battling around the church at 250 feet, it's quite difficult to concentrate on geography at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was that. And then, ever since, why would I go and do anything else?
Right. Okay. It sounds there's been quite a common thread with a lot of these interviews where people have been involved in the cadets and stuff, but there's usually something where they, look up and there's that moment of serendipity where they find their way into the industry, and once you're in, you're in. It is one of those things. So you're now chief exec of the Royal Aeronautical Society. So how did you get to that position? Because that's quite a lofty title.
It's an incredibly prestigious organisation to be chief exec of, and I sometimes, like all chief executives, I'm sure there is a little bit of imposter syndrome in all of us, and we all kind of wonder. When I read any management books, which I don't spend a lot of time reading management books because sometimes I don't really relate to, when I was 17, I woke up and this was going to be my path to the future. I think there's a lot of luck that goes into careers. There's the right place at the right time, and hopefully I have the skills to have got to where I've got to. But I started off. So once when I got to university time, I wanted to join the Air Force. A hearing issue on this side, one of those super hearing issues that doesn't affect me in the slightest, but doesn't make me that fit for career flying aeroplanes. I thought, right, I need to do something that sort of underpins all of this. So I went and did a transport management degree. Good start, I thought. Then after that, I went to Luton Airport and started working hand business jets. So 21, walked down to the apron. And it was a weird weekend. So it was the weekend when Diana, Princess of Wales, had been killed. And so I launched into a job where I'm meeting literally, you can imagine what London was like that weekend. It was full of everybody you've ever heard of. And in a business jet handling place, I was meeting people, kings, queens, whatever. That weekend was a very strange weekend to start a career.
Yeah.
So I spent about a year and a half in aircraft handling, out on the ramp, middle of the night, getting soaking wet, but meeting really famous people, and it was an incredibly nice time. And then one night I got a job at Heathrow, sort of towards the end of that, and I look back on it uncomfortably because I got to the end of my 3-month period, and then the night before my probation review, I had a phone call from an operator. And as ever, middle of the night, nothing much to do at both ends of the phone. I started chatting to them about the role, or about sort of what I wanted to achieve. And they'd got a job in flight operations, which was a little bit more aligned to what I'd done before. So had a chat. And again, this is where the lucky moments come up. There's a guy called Marwin, and he owned the company, but I didn't realize this throughout the conversation until the end of it. And I said, I should come have a chat with you all, I guess. And he said, yeah, come and see me tomorrow. And I'm Marwin and I own the company. So that was the interview done without knowing you were actually doing the interview. So again, that's the lucky moment, right? Walked into that organization in flight operations. We had 5 aircraft and about 40 people working in the business. Lovely little small business. Doing air ambulance flying, doing private jet flying, lots of medical transfer stuff. And then over the next 15 years, that company went from that to 120 aircraft, offices all around the world, from the kind of east coast of the States, right through the Middle East and into the Far East. And I progressed into quite quickly out of flight operations into project management, general management, group general manager. And at this time, we're bringing in MRO maintenance businesses as well. And then 2008 time, so I guess I'd been there about 6 years at that point, something like that. We got some equity investment from the Middle East, and the option to go to America, where we bought a company, or to the Middle East came up. And I said, I want to work in America. It's if you're going to be in business aviation, it's the place to be. And naturally, I ended up in Dubai because my boss wanted to go to America. So I moved to Dubai, never been to the Middle East before, literally landed with a briefcase, a suit in the middle of July, no idea how warm it was going to be, and set about setting up the organization, securing our AOC, our license to operate, open up a Part 145 maintenance business. And this was in the 2008, 2009 recession. So, it was an interesting period again. But we got up and running, got the licenses, started making money after about a couple of years, and that was going well. And then more expansion over to the Far East, into Asia, and I went to Hong Kong. So I was living in Dubai, spending a couple of weeks almost in Hong Kong every month. And the same thing, starting up an AOC over there, starting up a maintenance business. Put yourself back in the head of the kid in Wales at 14 who really didn't know what he was going to do. And all of a sudden, I'm involved in projects that I had no idea I would get involved in. And it was going really well, had responsibility for businesses all around the globe. So getting maybe 6 hours sleep occasionally, things like that. And then one day got a phone call out of the blue from Qatar Airways, who were looking for somebody to go and help them with their business jet division there, and also elements of their Royal flight, the RAeS flight. So after 5 years in Dubai, moved across to Qatar and took over that division. And this was a period where the airline was building a new airport. So looking at new terminal facilities, involved in managing terminal builds and fit outs, fleet renewals. We put in I think about a $1.5 billion order with Gulfstream. So just again, things that was not part of my game plan. I was just happy looking at planes, pretty much. So did that for 3 years, which was a really interesting time. I mean, Qatar Airways was always known as on or off kind of airline. It was intense, but did really well with what we were doing. As I say, got the first aircraft type in with the G500 or for the G650. So bringing that new aircraft type into operation on the Qatari register as well. And made quite a success of that business really in those 3 years. Then came back to the UK and thought, as ever, what do you do when you sort of come back? Well, let's start with some consulting, because kind of get back in network around the sector again. And naturally ended up with most of my consulting work being back in the Middle East, because life doesn't work like that. But also doing advisory work for banks and advisory work for owners of aircraft and things like that. So real mixed bag of consulting. Then had an opportunity to go and run what was then called BACA, which was the Baltic Air Charter Association, which is a sort of, I think it's about a 60-year-old organisation at the time, and took that organisation into what it is now, which is the Air Charter Association. And that traditionally was a sort of networking environment, but wanted to take it more into an active trade association, and was there for about 4.5 years, I guess, something like that. And during that period, we also had Brexit and COVID, which, if you're running a trade association, which the society isn't a trade association, thankfully I don't have to do quite as much tub thumping as you do when you're in the trade association world. But that, you can imagine the intensity of that period, because we got the challenges or opportunities of Brexit, depending on how you view them. creating a fairly unlevel playing field, I guess, within the charter sector. And then the curveball, just as things were starting to settle down with those negotiations, the curveball of COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID for me was intense time on the kind of the lobbying side, if you like. But then on the other part of my world, which was consulting and traveling to the Middle East, funnily enough, that disappeared quite quickly because I couldn't really leave the country to get down there, and a lot of consulting being in place and connections. And then in the July of 2021, my predecessor announced his retirement from the society. I'd actually applied for the role when he got it 3 years before.
All right.
So it was, I thought, no, I'm going to give this another shot. So I've been a fellow of the society for 20 years, something like that. And actually, when I was appointed a fellow of the society, I was the youngest fellow at the time. So, I have a lot of affinity and love for the society, and went through the job round, which lasted, I think, about 3 months, all in all, and took over in September 2021 from Sir Brian. So there you go. That was a very long speech of how it all happened. But I was at the University of West London just before Christmas doing a talk to their students about careers and stuff. And I was quite surprised because they were all talking about their career plans and how they'd mapped out the next 5 years and sort of what they needed to do on that roadmap to get to where they wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Never had that moment, and I still don't have that moment. So, those opportunities have come up, I've taken them, and I'm quite happy with where it's got me to, and the role I'm in now, and what the role allows me to do, hopefully, for the sector. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Right. Okay. Well, that's, I mean, I agree with you that I find it difficult and amazing when I talk to young people who they're planning out and plotting out, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And you're thinking, okay, that's an aspiration, but real life gets in the way frequently. And you have to be able to adapt and survive, because things like COVID comes along and just throws a huge, great spanner in the works. And if you just sit there and worry about your career path being damaged, as opposed to, okay, this has happened, so I need now to adapt my career path. It's you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible.
I think when I say these things out loud, I think I sound like the old bloke that I've become. But what slightly worries me is that resilience bit that does seem to be, psychologists will tell you resilience in younger people is becoming less of a thing. And, you can wrap resilience into whatever you like, but it is rolling with the punches. And if life was exactly what you're expecting it to be, that would be lovely, because I'd be, I'd been in this role 20 years ago. But life doesn't do that to you. And I think it's about how you respond to those opportunities and those curveballs, because every single day there's a curveball that, you've pretty much got two options to take on it. And whichever one you take, invariably, my brother comes up with a really good line of, those days when sort of the night before you were doing something in work and it was so stressful and you felt sick and you almost couldn't sleep. And I said, yeah, I remember those days. I remember that. I occasionally still get them today. And he said, can you remember what it was you were worried about? And I go, no, not really. I remember the feeling. I know what, and it's just that kind of perspective on life of, what seems so massively important to you right at the moment, in 10 years or even a year from now, probably isn't quite as big. And I think that's the resilience piece, isn't it? Of how you sort of process that threat or that thing in front of you. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, talking about young people, STEM/STEAM is probably that's the big thing for this whole podcast series. At Swift Aircraft, we have a high focus on STEM activity, and we want to, we have a hashtag which is inspiring aviation. We want to get young people back into aviation, because there are some people who are out there where it happens naturally, but the majority of people, I get the impression that then their awareness of aviation is minimal, and I think that's detrimental to our industry. We try and push the whole STEM thing. I'm assuming that the society has a big role to play in STEM activity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of our cores. I mean, we have a small staff team in the society. We've got about 45 people, but we've got 26,000, 27,000 members. So we have a lot of people who are interested in volunteering. We have corporate partners who support that. So we go from places like Yeovil with Leonardo. We go up to Rolls-Royce in Derby. We travel the country doing outreach work constantly. We have an education and outreach team. And the one thing I occasionally sort of worry about, which is a conversation I know we had quickly recently, is that there's so many of us trying to do really good things, and I love that we're all trying to do good things. The challenge is, I think it's the lack of joined upness across the sector, if that's a word. Because, and the analogy I use for this is, there are kids out there who want to come and work with us. I'm not worried about that at all. If you talk to any of the large OEMs, the Airbuses, the Boeings, if they open up or BA Systems, if they open up an apprenticeship scheme, whether that's standard apprenticeships or degree apprenticeships, they are overloaded with applicants for the number of places they have. So I don't think that is so much of a challenge. There's a mid-career challenge, which we're still not addressing in the right way. But if you are 35 with a mortgage and kids and life costs, how can you transfer with no specific sector skills into roles? Which is a debate that we've got to face up to, and I know it is what's happening in some of the trade associations as well. But we as a sector, magnitude-wise, if it's 5 million or 10 million, that's the argument of how much money we spend on outreach and getting to those kids a year within the UK. When you compare that to the likes of Google, which is spending, I think, 2.5 billion over 5 years on outreach, $2.5 billion, and they don't have as much of a problem finding people. Well, that's just literally, you come back to marketing spend. If we as a sector were able to spend all of our money together collectively in the right way, so have the same underlying message, the kind of bang for our buck, the return on our investment would be significant. Because like I say, the kids are out there who want to join us. We remain a relatively well-paid sector, a very high-skilled sector, and we just have some barriers to entry because we don't really talk to everybody. And this comes back to what I started with. I spend a lot of my time talking to the youngest people in every room I go into, because I remember what it was like when Bob Jones, the Welsh pilot farmer, gave me some time. And it's really sad because Bob died in an aircraft crash just about 10 years ago. But I'm kind of hopeful that if he knew what I was doing today, literally as a result of him taking the time to just hook me into this crazy world, that's why it's important for me to do it, and that's why it's important for you to be doing these podcasts. It's why everybody in the sector, if we just took a little bit of time, go and talk at your local schools. Schools are desperate for people to talk about their careers. I went down the road here to an infant school 6 months ago and was confronted by, I thought I was talking to 11-year-olds. I ended up talking to a group of 5-year-olds. Obviously, a bit of a different message at this point, but there's still kids who want to be astronauts. There's still kids who want to be fighter pilots. There's still people who want to join what we do. There's also a lot of people who want to be professional footballers and ballet dancers and everything. It's great. But those kids who are interested at that age in our sector, it's only people like me and you and everybody listening to this, speaking to them, just saying it's a really good, fun place to be.
Yeah.
Because whilst it is hard work, it's been pretty enjoyable. I don't think I've woken up in the morning thinking I hate what I do throughout my entire career. So yeah, it's all about that.
It is interesting when you start talking to youngsters, especially the very young. Some of the questions that they'll ask you will completely catch you off guard. You know, it's I've had a few experiences like that.
So I was just going to say, just give one confirmation of that. In the society, we have our annual banquet, which is our big event of the year. It's the presidential handover. And we had last year Gwynne Shotwell, who's the COO at SpaceX, so Elon Musk's right hand. And because obviously the gala dinner is a little bit more black tie and great and good, we brought her in earlier in the day to speak to, I think, about 40 or 50 air cadets from the southeast. And she was great because she'd allocated 40 minutes and she spent an hour and a half with them, just about talking about everything. The first question from the youngest cadet in the room was about the politics of space and how do you deal with sort of the conflicting requirements of the US, Europe, UK, and China. And this kid was 14 at most. And you just think, I would never at 14 have asked that. So these questions now are just far more deep than I think I would have asked at 14.
Yeah, it's I mean, I love doing the interaction because you don't know what they're going to come up with. I mean, it's just it's you got to be on your toes and you have to be honest. There's absolutely they won't let you away with anything, so you just have to answer. If you don't know, say I don't know. It's they will call you out. So no, it's good. I mean, it's really, really good. So we're getting towards the end. So two questions to go very quickly. One is, what do you see as the biggest innovation coming over the horizon at the moment, or within, shall we say, in the next 10 years, what's going to be the biggest change in aviation?
I mean, there's various bits to it. Obviously, within the sector, I'm in of aerospace, aviation, and space. I think the exciting thoughts of getting people back onto the moon, without a doubt, because that's an inspirational moment that we need right now. I think the opportunities that space creates, really excited by that. Definitely challenges on the defence front. I mean, who knows what this year might bring overall? It's not going to be necessarily an easy year for anybody. On the aviation itself, on the aircraft side, that the opportunities in the next decade to get power plants sorted and the actual, the future of fuel, the future of hydrogen, the future of electric energy, those are going to be the things that we need. We need them for all sorts of reasons. One, we need them to get back to a place where the planet is protected by what we do. Don't make aviation the only pariah in the world. I mean, there are the benefits of aviation. I know I'm talking to the converted here, but the benefits of aviation far outweigh what we're doing to the planet on that one element. The thing that is important for me is that we keep the investment going, and that's government support, that's support from knowing what's coming from the manufacturer's side, so investment's an easy decision for them. But it's an exciting time, and I think for kids looking at something, don't ignore the aviation world because of climate change. Come and solve the problem with us. We're doing amazing things on it. We are our own worst enemies for not talking about what we're doing. So we let the louder voices tell you what the bad that we're doing. We never talk about the good work that's going on. Some of the stuff that's hydrogen power is just cutting edge excitement. So don't walk away from us because you think that we are just killing the planet. There's some really great opportunities to be part of that change, which will come in the next 10 years.
Well said. That's that's a good challenge to throw back. No, I like that. Nice. That leads us to the biggest question of the day, and that is, what's your favorite aeroplane and why?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, Concorde would obviously tick a lot of boxes. Tornado would tick a lot of boxes because it, right place for me at the right time. Harrier would tick a lot of boxes. I met John Farley, the Harrier test pilot, when I was about 11, which played into all of the narrative. But one day I want to retire, buy a big field and buy a Piper Cub, so that I can, on the occasional sunny day on this lovely island, I can take off, kick the door open, and just bumble around at 60 miles an hour, doing nothing, but sort of watching the fields go past very slowly. I realise when that happens, Piper Cubs will be near 100 years old, but Piper Cub for me.
Wow. Yeah, very, very purist.
I can just about keep up with the Piper Cub these days.
I mean, it's such a simple aircraft, and it's always there in the background, and there are so many copies of it that are kicking around, and there's new ones made in carbon fiber and all sorts. So would you go for a traditional one?
I would. I might have to work on the pension for that, but yeah, I think an original one. By complete fluke, and about 20 years ago, I got to fly in a MiG-29.
Wow!
And I, at that point, realised that I didn't choose the wrong career, because the fighter pilot bit of me is not there. I mean, I was, like a rabbit in the headlights for the entirety of the hour. I'm flying out of Moscow, but I think I can keep up with as you say, the purest bit of a Piper Cub. So that's the plan.
Right. Okay. So we'll put a picture of the Piper Cub up on the wall. Do you have anyone in particular? Is there an existing aircraft that you are aware of, or is it just a generic one?
Yeah. Where it came from is when I was 16, working at the airfield back as a kid. One of my dad's friends bought a Piper Cub, and he said throughout the next sort of 18 months, the minute you get your PPL, you can use it as much as you want. Just fly it. Go and get your tailwheel rating. You just pay for it. And he sold it on the day I got my PPL. I know. Bless him. He's still around, but that's the only. It's the sort of I want to recover what I thought I was going to get when I was 17. So yeah, I can't remember the registration of it, but I'm not sure that I want that one specifically. But yeah.
Right. Okay. So your Piper Cub will join a variety of aircraft on a virtual control tower wall. It is the first Piper Cub that we have, but I think it's a worthy inclusion. I think it deserves to be there, and I hadn't thought of that actually. It's been out with my thought process for a while. So you've made me reconsider about it. So I'll go and do a bit more reading.
In the career I've had, I've been really fortunate. I've flown all sorts of airplanes, completely without any skill, but I've flown simulators of everything from 747s to Gulfstreams to RAeS, and as I say, the MiG flights, and they've all been amazing in their own way. But that thought of just bumbling around in Piper Cub, not much, but being away from the phone.
Low and slow, low enough so you can see the legs on the sheep as you pass overhead.
Precisely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Short Circuit. And we shall speak to you again sometime soon in the not too distant future.
Indeed. Thanks very much for your time, Mike.
So that was Dave Edwards, a man who has grown from grassroots on a windy field in the middle of Wales to a position of real influence in the world of aviation. It's great that this humbled little podcast can get access to such a character, and that we have a similar enthusiasm for the development of young people in our industry. I just love the challenge that he has given to the youth of today, not to turn away from the industry for environmental reasons, but to take the industry forward in a sustainable way. We need air travel, and we need young people to help us make it work properly for our futures. And on that note, and with the hashtag Inspiring Aviation, I'll end by saying, fly safe. You have been listening to The Short Circuit, presented by Mike McLean and sponsored by Swift Aircraft with the hashtag Inspiring Aviation. This has been a Zoom Spike production.